happening between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Barker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Hello and welcome to the second half of the season in the Maximum Network Touring Car Trophy, powered by VRRC. We've had 3 events already, 6 races down, and the points situation, I can tell you, is extremely tight still as we move into the second half of the season. Another 6 races then to decide the champions in both of the 2 classes on offer, and this is where things really start to get serious. Andy McEwen here in the virtual commentary box. Jack Oliphant, as ever, is my partner in crime for these races, and I know we've both really enjoyed the racing that's been on offer so far. We arrive now at the 4th of 6 racetracks to host this wonderful championship, the high-speed sweeping Thruxton circuit, unofficially still the fastest racetrack in Britain. In a week's time we head to the national circuit at Donington Park, and then onto the Snetterton 300 circuit, the 24th of February, likely to be the date on which both of our class championships are decided. Jack, it's been a great season so far, some really fabulous racing. Essentially every single race that we've had has had something noteworthy happen, and a week ago at Brands Hatch that was no different.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was no different, and we can see the drivers that came away with the most amount of points. No surprise to see these 3 on your screen. Lovely new graphics, by the way, as well, VRRC providing. But Jordan Brennan took home the most amount of points. He had a fantastic evening. Jack McIntyre in 2nd place. Little spoilers ahead. In practice, he has a little bit of work to do. Interesting to see how he comes out of this one. Jack Smith also in 3rd place, and we sort of half believe that he might be actually racing from a different country. So interesting to see, again, how he gets on. Jordan Brennan looking strong as ever in practice, by the way. If we move over to the silver category, then you'll see Joel Lask. Fantastic evening. He got an overall podium in that 2nd race, actually. Did a really good job as the rest of the field struggled to get through at Brands Hatch. Dave Buki in second place as well. Really strong from him. I think that was the best result that he's had this season over an entire round anyway. And Paul Zanatachi, well, blinking you're missing, but you probably won't, to be honest, with that livery. Absolutely flying, brilliant in a front-wheel drive car. And again, he's featured on every single top 3 step of the silver category over an evening's work, of course. Driver of the day, you see him currently on the screen, and you see him again now. It was Joel Lask for achieving that fantastic overall podium in race number 2.
Yeah, and well and truly taking the fight to some of the established frontrunners within the gold class as well. He had some serious pace in that second race in particular at Brands Hatch, but had a strong night overall. Here is what all of that means for the championship standings. Well, I told you it was tight, and I wasn't lying, because we've got 6 points covering the top 3 drivers in the gold category. It's Jordan Brennan then in the Riggs Esports powered by Liqui Moly car who leads the way, a 4-point advantage over Jack McIntyre for Rocket Sim Sport, and the Smart Fight driver in third place there, as you can see, is Jack Smith, and those 3 have really pulled out a pretty enormous cushion now. 30 points further back is 4th place Dave Newsham, with Lewis Brown in 5th place ahead of Eric Axelson, Rob Butler, and the rest. Tight in the gold class, Jack, and exactly the same is true of silver.
Yeah, exactly. Andy Carroll currently leading the silver category, 63 points. 3 points ahead of that ever-consistent Paul Zanatachi as well. It's 60. Fantastic display by those 2. But Dave Buki only a point behind, and Martin Johnson in 4th, only 10 points behind Andy Carroll in 1st. So realistically, in the gold category, we've got a top 3 running away with it. A platinum category, you could probably arguably call them. In the silver, you've got 4 drivers that are all within a decent shout of sort of going into the final round, probably in 1st place, any one of them. But then realistically, it's not that big a drop-off. You got Joel Lask in 5th, 10 points behind Martin Johnson as well. So you only need 1 or 2 bad races or 1 bad evening, Andy, and everything gets shaken up again, specifically in that silver category.
Yeah, Lask was the joint highest point scorer within the silver category along with Buki a week ago. So if he can do that again consistently over the remaining 3 events, then yeah, every chance that he could still insert himself well and truly into that championship battle. The championship we're talking about a lot. We're talking about points, and of course it's not just for pride. There are some pretty special prizes up for grabs for those who are successful both within the gold and the silver category. The champions will both share a test day in a TCR UK car, and that is a huge opportunity for whoever ends up getting that, be that a real world or purely a sim racer. As I said, they will both share that day, getting half a day each. Second place in each class will win a set of OBP Esports hydraulic pedals to fit onto their rig, whilst third place gets a Riggs SR5 simulator chassis. This is some pretty premium equipment that is on offer for those that finish within 2nd or 3rd in the classes. 4th place within each class wins 2 VIP tickets to a TCR UK round, and 5th place receives 2 hours simulator training Silverstone. And if that's on the simulator at Silverstone that I was playing with yesterday, then that really is a fantastic prize to receive. I had an awful lot of fun at the Silverstone Centre yesterday, and yeah, that will be what goes to our 5th placed drivers, Sir Jack.
Yeah, it's a fantastic prize pool, isn't it? A lot of drivers are still in the running for. This is what I love about VRRC. When they do prizes, they do them properly. And it's not just the top 3, so if you're in 7th, you're thinking, oh, it's not worth racing anymore. Prizes all the way down to 5th, keeps more people involved, more people interested, and a big thank you to Maximum Networks for donating a lot of those prizes, especially the TCR UK Test Day for gold and silver winners. Right, before we get too carried away with everything that they could win, first of all, we have to see how they manage the Thruxton circuit on a hot lap in the TCR car.
So across the line here for round 4 of the Maximum Networks Touring Car Trophy, powered by VRRC, and as you can see, completely flat through turn 1 here at sunny Thruxton. Now down towards the first complex, really hard on the brakes, down to 2nd gear, trying to take quite a lot of that entry curve just to shorten the track a little bit. Little short shift into 3rd, and then make sure we're completely flat out through Seagrave, because the run out of there is one of the crucial corners and really will hinder you going down towards Noble if you don't. Then through Noble, we'll see two different line choices there. Some people take a lot of curb on the left. I prefer to keep it smooth around the outside. And then Goodwood, a bit of a test of commitment really. How early will you get on that throttle? If you go left there, it is extremely hard to get back onto track. Down towards the infamous Church, completely flat, about 140 mile an hour through there, so very, very quick corner indeed. And this is where the main race around Thruxton will see. In the slipstream, and who will give it a late lunge into the last chicane, just hitting about 150 mile an hour down to third gear and roll it in and getting as close to the wall as we can. And there is a lap of Thruxton. Make sure you tune in on Thursday night on VRRC's YouTube, and make sure you give this video a like and subscribe.
So the Thruxton circuit is a real challenge. We say this every week, but Thruxton, Jack, it really is one of those circuits that is a driver's favourite, but all of the drivers have to show it some respect. It will bite if you get it wrong, and especially because we've got the addition here today of a couple of deterrents you can see up here at the chicane. The chicane, in theory, should be one of the easier parts of the circuit, Jack, but drivers will have to be careful not to make a mistake, or indeed take too many track liberties.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure which drivers you often speak to, Andy, but I actually hated driving at Thruxton. It's not my favourite at all. The only reason why I hated it, actually, to be fair, because it is quite fun going at the full speed and going through church, full whack and everything like that, and the chicanes are quite good fun and stuff. It's just terrifying, honestly. It's probably a little less scary when you're in the simulator, but doing exactly what Rich Aiden's just done there and flying off to the left-hand side, that barrier comes at you very quickly when you're at full pace, going across the grass. And the track just keeps going away from you. It's a constant right-hand turn, so if you go off the left, you're rarely getting back on the circuit anytime soon. And Rich is clearly showing it, as I've been talking about it. He's going to end up in the wheat farm, I think, over there. But yeah, it's a very, very energetic track. You need a lot of sort of stamina to get the best out of it. Concentration levels are at the maximum, and there are only 2 or 3 braking zones, so it's really important that you be efficient and decisive when you're chasing up to someone and you get the overtake done.
Yes, most definitely. It requires commitment and bravery, this place, at least in the sim, I suppose. You know that it's not going to hurt too much if you get it wrong, and it's certainly not going to hurt your wallet quite as much as it would in the real world. Right, qualifying underway then. 15 minutes for the drivers to set the fastest possible lap time. We are nearly 5 minutes in, which is just about when they're starting to get fully up to speed. It's Jordan Brennan that leads the way at the moment. Jack Smith, we were following him through the second half of that lap. He jumps onto the outside of the front row with Paul Zanatachi in third. That's a really good effort, that, for a silver graded driver. We do, of course, expect the lap times to improve as we go on. Callum Newsham here, Jack, made his debut in the championship a week ago at Brands Hatch. He was quick, wasn't he? But maybe a little accident prone. Both he and his father were getting involved in a few rough and tumble moments out on the track. They'll be hoping that they'll have the same sort of speed, but maybe they can stay out of trouble here this week.
Yeah, I can't actually see Dave Newsham anywhere, but Callum Newsham is showing exactly your point. He flies up into second place with a really strong time as well, a low 1:13. And I remember Dave and Callum, they were involved with the League of Champions, especially Callum, which is a championship that VRRC ran probably about 6 months ago, which is weird how time flies. But again, Callum was really quick, but forever getting involved in little incidents. And we had a touring car championship in the League of Championship, and we had a Ginetta one as well, and it was forever. He was very quick, but it just never seemed to click for him. So he's showing good pace here at Thruxton. He clearly likes it. Maybe he's got a good handling of the car now as well. It's just that racecraft and being in the right place at the right time, which sounds like it should be luck, but actually in motorsport you can find it's a bit of a skill as well.
Yeah, especially in touring car racing, and that's something that Callum will be learning this year, of course, as he makes the step up into TCR UK for 2022, and it's going to be fascinating to see how he gets on. It's certainly touring car racing is in his genes, because his father Dave is a former British Touring Car Championship race winner, and Callum going down the TCR route, and we wish him the best of luck this year. He's gone second fastest then, as Jack says, within the qualifying section. Paul Zanatachi still doing a really good job here in 5th place, and as Jack alluded to earlier on, Paul is the only driver who has managed to appear in the top 3 point scorers within class at every round so far this season, and that's why, because he's blooming quick, second fastest overall, within a 10th of Jordan Brennan. They say, don't they, Jack, that this racetrack can sometimes bring out the best or the worst in a driver. I think it's very much bringing out the best in Paul Zanatachi.
Yeah, he's absolutely flying, isn't he? I mean, Jordan Brennan, as we mentioned before, a little bit of an alien, to be honest. He's just extended his pole position lap time as he's got out there on the fresh tyres, starting to push it, see what the limits can do. Thruxton's it's very important to nail the 1st and 3rd sector at Thruxton. Pretty much everybody does the 2nd sector exactly the same, because it's just flat out. There's no braking zones. It's just scrub a little speed as possible. But the 1st and 3rd sector with those 2 chicanes are where you can really make up the time. Zanatachi, just before Jordan Brennan crossed the line, Zanatachi was purple in sector 3. So that's where he found so much time in that lap, and again, really putting strong pace in here for a silver driver to out-qualify not only Callum Newsham, but big names like Jack Smith, Jack McIntyre as well, obviously Dave Newsham you mentioned, owner of VRRC, Rich Hayden as well is up there, so huge amount of props to him. Eric Axelson's labouring down in 14th, we'll expect him a little bit further up, but massive props to Zanatachi, he's got it hooked.
Yeah, he definitely has. On board with Joel Lask, who was our driver of the day a week ago, as we mentioned, and he is currently running 8th place in the session overall, but that is still second in class. Whoops, car in the barriers there ahead of us, not quite sure who that was. There's another one bouncing over the grass, and that may well have delayed Lask slightly. Yeah, I believe it might have been Felvis then, who was Carl Felvis, who was off in the barriers, and indeed it is. I think he's now managed to get out of the barriers and heads for the pit lane. That chicane already catching a few people out. Brendan then with just over a quarter of a second in hand over Zanatachi second, still can't quite get over that. Callum Newsham 3rd, Jack Smith in 4th, Jack McIntyre in 5th position ahead of Dave Newsham in 6th place. As far as the Gold Class Championship contenders then, Brennan, the points leader, is at the moment on course for a fairly comfortable pole position. Jack McIntyre down in 5th, just behind Jack Smith in 4th, so advantage championship-wise for the time being at least to Jordan Brennan.
Exactly, yeah, Jordan will be probably feeling pretty strong. I mean, he would have been confident after practice. I'm sure he's always confident because he's always capable of pulling something out of the bag. But tonight, with a couple of cars in between himself and the rest of what is probably the championship pack in terms of the top 3, he'll be very, very pleased about the situation he finds himself in. 6 minutes to go, though, so realistically there's an opportunity for these other drivers. Callum Newsham, as I mentioned, Zanatachi, sort of throwing a spanner in the works, which we like to see. But realistically, Smith and McIntyre, they'll be more disappointed than Brennan is happy, I would say, because at Thruxton, everything can change, Andy, can't it? You get in the slipstream of someone, and when you're flying into that final chicane, there's always an opportunity to lunge. Whether it's around the outside or the inside, a 2/10 gap can pretty much go to 0 within half a lap.
Yeah, and what makes this extra complicated for Smith and McIntyre, I know we've still got 5 minutes of the session to go, but they have, the 2 drivers that are separating themselves from Brennan are 2 wild card drivers, really. Zanatachi, who is a silver driver, as we've documented, doesn't really have to fight against those gold class drivers, but given an opportunity to finish on the overall podium, I'm sure he will fight them. And then Callum Newsham, who's not been competing in the full season, he's not points racing at all. He just wants race wins, so that certainly will add a nice bit of spice to this championship battle that becomes more and more significant, of course, the closer to the end of the season we get. Brad Smith, by the way, is still deputising as he was a week ago for Nicky Taylor. Nicky Taylor still far too busy sunning himself on a beach in Cape Verde to come and race with us, so he'll be watching and cheering on Brad Smith, who is currently 11th, just got demoted actually to the back of the top 10. Jack McIntyre, meanwhile, goes second. That is a lot more like it. He's still the best part of a quarter of a second off pole, but that gained him a good 3 positions on the grid. That was crucial.
Yeah, I know, it makes it almost look like Jordan Brennan's just cut a corner somewhere, he's that far ahead, doesn't it? But no, that's actually, as far as we can tell, a perfectly legal lap that Brennan has set. And McIntyre, Zanatachi, Newsham, Smith, they're all within a tenth of each other, even less than that, about half a tenth within, for each other. So the battle for second might be hotly contested. What we're hoping for, obviously, is that the draft allows them to catch up to Brennan, and then the fight for first, obviously, is the most entertaining thing of the day. Just talking about, obviously, Zanatachi with that silver category as well. I'm having a look. Second place, and a driver who's carried that momentum from Brands Hatch, I'm talking second place in terms of silver, is last. Obviously, driver of the day, last time out. And we thought, oh, maybe that's just a bit of a one-off or something. But actually, he's shown good pace again, ahead of Carroll, who's been struggling. We've seen him spin out of the last corner already. So Joel Lask really sort of pushing on strong. And apart from Zanatachi, quickest of the silvers.
Yes, and of course, with reversed grids to be factored in for the second race of the night, he could still be on for another good haul of points, couldn't he? Second in class in race 1 could very easily become a race win in the second race. Joel Lask here, we're following him through the ultra-fast right-hander at Church Corner, which is scary enough on the sim, it must be said. I can only imagine what it's like to drive through there in real life, but Joel Lask, foot flat to the boards now as he climbs Woodham Hill into the club chicane, hops over the first curb, completely ignores the second curb. He's fully to the inside of it. The same really is true through the final part of the chicane. Can he improve on 8th position? The answer is no, but he's got time for another couple of laps in the session. He'll have this second set of tyres that he'll have fitted halfway through the session now, fully up to temperature. And Jack, he's got a car, just under a second up the road from him. How powerful do you think the slipstream will be around here in these cars?
Well, I would say very powerful, and I was going to say maybe that's what helped Jordan Brennan. Maybe he just got the perfect draft, but actually I was looking at the track map. Brennan, a bit like Max Verstappen, just sort of went on his own. He led everybody else pretty much, and that's when he set his time. So it is powerful. To us mere mortals, it would be absolutely essential when it comes to qualifying to get into someone's draft. But Carl Felvers chucking it off the road there is probably the last thing that Lask will want, although I think he's just followed him. Because as you go through Church, that is the one place on the track you don't want to catch someone up. There is one line through Church, it's flat out, and if you come off the throttle even just a touch, even a feather, almost like a confidence lift, you will end up losing 2 or 3 miles an hour when you get into the braking zone, which is just about to hit. So it's so important to just trust the driver in front of you that they're going to be taking as much speed as you are and hope for the best, basically. But Joel Lask looks like he's got that third sector nicely hooked up. Maybe there was a touch more speed that he could have thrown in, but he's gone through, hit the timing screen, and it's still 8th place. But Dave Buki has just come in just behind him and pipped Andy Carroll to 9th.
Yeah, so he had almost a double toe because he was chasing down Lask, and of course they were both chasing Felvers, weren't they? So that's really impressive stuff from Buki, who definitely we can't be counted out of this Silver Class Championship battle. Right, on board with Jack McIntyre then. He also has a slipstream there from a car just up the road, and he's going to need all the help he can get here because he's now nearly 0.3 of a second off pole position. Brennan's managed to move the goalpost, and in fact he's now off the front row because Callum Newsham just barely goes quicker than him. Look at that. That is just over 100th of a second quicker for Newsham than McIntyre, but McIntyre might yet be able to take that second place back. He climbs the curbs into the club chicane. That looked almost inch perfect. Bit sideways on the exit. Oh, there's someone even more sideways in front. Complete spin for somebody. And McIntyre does go second. No, he doesn't. Jack Smith goes second. And yet again, we've got the top 3 in the championship filling out the top 3 places on the grid. And all of a sudden, Jack, it is an awful lot tighter.
Yeah, they've turned up to the party, haven't they? Smith and McIntyre, they may have left it late, but here they are, and they've announced themselves 0.03 of a second behind Jordan Brennan, who was probably feeling maybe a little bit more confident 30 seconds ago than he is now. Jack McIntyre, again, with an astonishingly quick lap. It's only good enough for 3rd place. Then you've got the best of the rest, which yet again is Callum Newsham, just like he was a week ago, followed by, obviously, Zanatachi, Dave Newsham, and Rich Hayden. But it is fantastic to see the top 3 just getting that little bit closer. Brennan was strong, may not be strong enough, you never know.
There's a car just ahead of Smith and McIntyre that might even be Brennan, in which case Brennan has just given a lovely slipstream to his 2 championship rivals. It is, isn't it?
It is, actually, yeah.
Brennan, who now pulls out of the way, but how frustrated will he be if either McIntyre or Smith steal pole position here, because they're both still on hot laps. Into the chicane they go then. The checkered flag is out. Oh, McIntyre makes a real Horlicks of the chicane. He's not going to go to pole position, surely, but what can Jack Smith do? Across the line, McIntyre stays 3rd, Smith stays 2nd, and Brennan helped them to get close to him, but in the end they weren't able to find a way past. Dave Newsham will finish the session in 6th position, and we now wait for the last few drivers to come through. Joel Lask and Dave Buki here still circulating together. Over the curbs they go. Buki's made made a mess of the chicane, so he's not going to improve. Joel Lass comes through and does go 6th place overall, and that, Jack, is really important. It gains him 2 places on the grid, puts him alongside Zanatachi on the 3rd row.
Yeah, fantastic effort there by Joel Lask. As we mentioned before, in 5th place at the moment, 10 points to catch up to Martin Johnson. If he carries on like this, he will be catching up. Trust you me. Kenny Press about to finish the qualifying, and that means we're going to head to a very quick advert before we have a chat to our pole sitter.
At SmartFi, we do things differently. It starts with our 100% buyback guarantee. When you buy SmartFi token on the Smart Portal and hold it for a year or more, we'll buy back your token at the price you paid for any reason under the sun. You can borrow cash with our collateralized crypto loans or earn up to 13% interest on your holdings. SmartFi unleashes the true potential of cryptocurrencies, and there are so many reasons now more than ever to get involved. Join us today at smartfi.com. Grow your wealth and secure your future with simple, smart, and safe finance.
The Maximum Networks Touring Car Trophy, powered by VRRC, has powered into the Thruxton circuit in Hampshire here for the 4th event of 6, and has already provided us, I would argue, with the most exciting qualifying session of the season so far. It was a session that was topped by Jordan Brennan, though, and Jordan joins us now in the commentary box. Jordan, that ended up being an awful lot closer at the end than it was part way through, but you've got the pole position. How was that session for you?
Yeah, it is a little bit closer than I want it to be. I couldn't really get anywhere near my practice time, so it was a little bit difficult. I hit the wall early on my first run, so I had to box early and then sort of split it up a bit and do a couple of runs. But yeah, it was a good quali, and fair play to everyone for being so close.
We did notice towards the end of the session that they got close to you not only on time, but also on the track, because we had McIntyre and Smith were both in your slipstream. Were you aware of that? Were you tempted at any point to pull out of the way so as not to give them an advantage?
I was trying to give Jack a little bit of a tow, because I wanted him to see if he can get ahead of Smith. Because I think Jack Smith's a little bit quicker around here than Jack Mack, so I kind of wanted to give Jack the tow so he'd be further in front on the grid. But no, I just pulled off at the end, and he didn't go any quicker.
That is really interesting then. So almost playing them off against each other. Can you try and maybe do that in the race now? You know, if you can't shake them off, you know, sometimes if you start defending, it can back them into each other, can't it?
It can do, but I think the toe's that big around here that it's going to be difficult. I think leading on the first lap, it might not be the best thing going onto that back straight, but we'll see what happens.
So you're anticipating a proper old-fashioned slipstreamer then?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Good stuff. Well, we'll let you go and finish your preparations then, but sounds like it's going to be a good race. Congratulations on pole, Jordan.
Cheers, thank you.
Well, Jack, that's really interesting. A couple of interesting takeaways from that. I'm fascinated at his tactics there and the way that he was choosing to tow Jack McIntyre around. If it was anyone other than McIntyre or Smith, I'd have understood it, but that takes some real presence of mind to be able to look at your 2 championship rivals and think, right, I'm going to help one of them because it might actually work out better for me in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, if you're playing chess and you got no one to play against yourself, sort of thing, isn't it? I mean, it's very impressive. I think maybe if it hadn't come off and we hadn't ended up speaking to Jordan Brennan because Jack McIntyre got pole position, I don't think Brennan would probably have been singing his praises. But it's a confident move. It's managed to work out, maybe just a touch for him. He's in pole position. We'll see what happens. What I'm hoping for and what I expect, Andy, is the fact that it will be very, very close. And all it does is sort of bunch everyone together, which can only be good for spectators.
Yeah, most definitely. Sounds like we are in for a pair of very close races, both of them 20 minutes in duration. Thank you for joining us here on the VRRC. We've got 2 races to bring you tonight, so don't go anywhere after the first one because we'll very quickly move into that second race, which has the full reversed grid. There are the cars on the grid though ahead of the first race of the night then, and this is a pivotal night of racing really, because after tonight there'll be just 4 races left in the championship, and given how tight the point situation is at the moment, you don't really want to be leaving Thruxton too far away from the top of the points. It's Brennan on pole position, Jack Smith alongside him, Jack McIntyre and Callum Newsham make up the second row of the grid. Newsham, remember, the first driver on the grid who isn't really a championship contender. Then you've got the top two silver graded drivers. Fantastic qualifying efforts there for Paul Zanatachi and Joel Lask, first and second in class respectively, ahead of two gold drivers, Dave Newsham and Rich Hayden. Dave Buchan and Andy Carroll are down on the fifth row of the grid together. Don't forget, Carroll is the silver class championship leader and starts at the back of the top 10. We are less than 10 seconds, though, away from the start of round number 7 of the Maximum Networks Touring Car Trophy, powered by VRRC. Pole for Brennan, alongside him Jack Smith. Who gets into that first corner first? We'll find out now, because the red lights go out, wheels spin as they try to get going. Good stop made by McIntyre from third, but not quite good enough to get alongside Jack Smith. So the top 3 or 4 runs single file through the first turn. Callum Newsham runs wide. Zanatachi might try to get to the inside as they head towards the complex, but already the defensive driving begins. Jordan Brennan moves to the middle of the road. Smith to the outside, and McIntyre sees his chance up the inside. They almost rub. They just avoid it, and the positions stay as they were.
Yeah, the front man Brennan has just got that half a car length gap now. As he looks in his mirror, he'll see Smith and McIntyre fighting. Further back here is Zanatachi versus Buki. So Lask is actually leading the silver category. I'm not sure how that happened, but Buki sees himself get ahead of Zanatachi, who's had an awful first half of this lap. We have to go flying now. This is all about commitment, Noble and Church. Just foot to the floor and hope for the best. And at the moment, Brennan is currently the best.
Old tyres, remember, low tyre pressures as well, and out the back of this circuit, that is not what you want. Very easy to lose the rear of the car through corners like Church, but Dave Buki, because he is mad, is trying to go around the outside of Zanatachi on those cold tyres to reclaim second place in class. For second place overall, though, Jack Smith is up the inside of Jack McIntyre. He reclaims the position from which he started, McIntyre having got through in the first half of the lap. And this is exactly what Jordan Brennan wants to see, because as they battle for second, he clears off to the tune of nearly a second by the end of the opening lap. Brennan leads, Smith second, McIntyre third, Callum Newsham fourth, and Joel Lask in fifth place.
Yeah, if Smith and McIntyre were smart about this, this would be the biggest gap that Brennan would have all race. But as they continue to make contact and race against each other and then add Callum Newsham into the mix, I think that Brennan is only going to extend this as they go through the rest of the lap. A 9/10 of a second. He's gained 2/10 from T1 to this point in the lap, which is a good quarter or a third. So this could only be better. This could only get better for Brennan through the rest of this lap. And if they're not careful, they'll lose the slipstream, which will be absolutely disastrous. Eric Axelsen, one of the drivers that I wanted to mention in qualifying, but slightly for the wrong reasons, really. We saw him really strong at Brands Hatch. We're very impressed with him. Very impressed with him in the MX-5s as well on a Tuesday night. But languishing outside the top 10 at the moment in the TCT. Hopefully he'll push forward. Him and Carl Felbers out of position, that's for sure. Jack McIntyre looking, not really, sort of looking up the inside of Smith there, but Smith defending anyway. So McIntyre maybe in his head a little bit. And Brennan, he was closed. That gap went down by 2 or 3 tenths, but now it's just extended again.
Yeah, they were catching out the back with that slipstream, and then as soon as Smith defended slightly into the club chicane, they lost all of the time they'd gained. So it does sort of prove your point, doesn't it, that they should maybe be working together here, exactly as Brennan did in qualifying. You know, think about this. Don't just go hell for leather fighting for every position. Try and work with someone, even if that someone is one of your championship rivals, because right now they've both got a common enemy up the road in Jordan Brennan. They both need to try and reel him in, which at the moment they're not doing. That gap is getting dangerously close to a second, and that is when you start to get into the realms of breaking the toe. You can see the way they pulled away from Callum Newsham by over a second. I think he's finding out now that he's losing the slipstream, doesn't have the pace to go with them. Joel Lask, though, has the pace to go with him. Joel Lask is actually closing on Newsham this lap as the fight for second heads back through Church Corner.
Yeah, impressive car control by McIntyre there. When you're going into Church and into the final complex, actually, it's pretty much a blind turn-in zone. Into the final complex, it's a blind braking zone. So the fact they're not going into the back of each other is fair impressive. But they should look behind them, especially McIntyre. Look behind. See the fact that Callum Newsham has now lost the toe and he's just dropping, and use that as an incentive, because if you lose the toe to Brennan, you'll drop too, and that's the last thing he needs. Smith and McIntyre were really smart about it. They would start almost slingshotting each other, but that's a lot of communication between drivers that aren't allowed to talk to each other during a race. Felder's getting past Andy Carroll there, who's having a bit of a struggle of the night, to be honest, and Brad Smith as well, pushing on strong against Felder. So this is a very interesting battle as Brad Smith nudges Felder out the way. Felder has to cut across the grass, hopefully rejoin safely, but probably lose a lot of momentum. Remember, Brad Smith substituting for Nicky Taylor.
Yes, and through he goes, brings Carroll with him, and maybe, looks like Carl Felvers might lose out to Eric Axelson. No, Axelson just hasn't got the speed here tonight, has he? Struggles to go around the outside. Well done to Felvers, though, on rejoining safely. He made sure that he merged a bit further round the corner. He does now run wide, actually, and let Axelson through. But, yeah, did well not to make that situation worse by just flooring the throttle and rejoining right in the middle of the pack. Out of Church Corner they go then. Slipstream starts to build. Andy Carroll trying to use that to have a go at Brad Smith, and Kyle Felvers trying to use that against Eric Axelson. On board with Felvers, looks to the inside, back to the outside. Nothing doing in either direction, and actually all four of these cars staying in the same position. Now, at the front of the field, something major has happened here to Jordan Brennan, because Jack Smith and Jack McIntyre are right with him, and in fact Smith is alongside Brennan for the race lead. That must have been a mistake for the race leader, Jack.
Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you? I mean, obviously, if they make a mistake into the final complex, they're not allowed to cut any of the corners anymore because there's big tyre walls in the way. So Brennan probably had to slam the brakes on, and that's given Smith a sniff at trying to get this race lead off him. Going around the outside through the double left-hander here is very brave. I saw Carlito Moracco fly off into the barriers, but I think Smith has just about nailed it. Brilliant move by Jack Smith. McIntyre looking to take advantage of the two in front of them battling, but as they go towards Church, he doesn't know where to go. All I can say is that I would rather be in McIntyre's shoes than Smith or Brennan's, and this is why. If he can get the undercut, he should have the overspeed. Brennan back alongside Smith. McIntyre's trying to draft off Smith, and look at Callum Newsham in the rear-view mirrors as well. Very interested in seeing what's going on. Brennan back into first place, defends into the final complex, but McIntyre sends everything around the outside, doesn't get the job nailed, and Newsham is now attacking him.
4 cars under a blanket, 5 cars under a blanket, because Joel Lask is closing in on them hand over fist as they continue to trip over each other. Still, Brennan leads the way then. I'm not quite sure how he got the lead back there, because it looked like he was down and out halfway round the lap. That was a hell of a move made by Jack Smith to get the lead around the outside at Noble Corner. That is very, very difficult to pull off, and he did pull it off briefly, with Brennan then slipstreaming back through again on the run towards the chicane. So Brennan leads from Smith second. Bit of a gap back now to McIntyre in third and Callum Newsham in fourth, with Joel Lask keeping the watching brief in fifth place. The next car behind him, by the way, is the purple car of Paul Zanatachi. He's got past Dave Newsham over the last lap or so. Still remains second place in class. 13 minutes to go then, and again they're side by side for the race lead, heading towards Church Corner. Smith to the outside, Brennan defends the inside line. That's not a place you want to be running side by side. Smith can't go around the long way, instead tucked back into the slipstream, and Callum Newsham on the grass in the background.
Yeah, Callum Newsham throwing everything at it, and I think Smith has lost out on a bit of time here because McIntyre goes to the left-hand side. Smith defending hard, late on the brakes as well. McIntyre tried this just before. He almost got overtaken by Newsham. Smith is going to be in big trouble here. He's not going to have the speed out the final corner. Jordan Brennan is absolutely loving this, as well as Callum Newsham flies into second place with the overspeed on the exit of the final chicane.
Callum Newsham read that situation perfectly. Smith is sideways, almost loses it out of Allard's corner. That could have been a championship-defining moment, but he hangs on to it, stays in third. But this again now is allowing Brennan to build actually a bigger gap than he's ever had so far in this race. 1.4 seconds up the road, and now that Newsham is into second place, with the greatest of respect to Callum, he hasn't so far shown the raw speed that Smith or McIntyre has. Smith needs to try and get through as soon as he can. Otherwise, they're going to start holding each other up more and allowing the leader to keep on building that advantage. Through the right-hander they go. On board with McIntyre in fourth position. Remember, Jack McIntyre is second in the championship. Tries to find a way up the inside of Jack Smith. There's just nowhere to go.
Yeah, push him down the straight. That's, I think, all McIntyre can really do. He needs to work with Smith to get past Callum Newsham, who is basically just here for trophies, isn't he? He's not in the championship running. He just wants race victories if he can get them. And at the moment, he's taking that second place with a plum. But as I mentioned before, I think McIntyre's best play here is to not to fight Smith. It's to push him down the straight. There goes Newsham off the circuit. They don't have to worry about him anymore. And Newsham, after a fantastic 2 laps, ends up falling behind Joel Lask. Brilliant performance by him so far. Take nothing away from Lask. Callum, really, it was under his own steam there, Andy.
Yeah, that was his own mistake, but he's not the first person to make that mistake at the chicane, and probably won't be the last. Those curbs are pretty vicious, and if you hit them at the wrong angle, it will bounce you across the road, and actually he was lucky it didn't bounce him into the barriers. His dad is now catching that group as well, so you've got Newsham Jr. and Newsham Sr. sandwiching Zanatachi at the moment, with Joel Lask just in front of them, and yet again, those top 3 drivers in the championship start to make a break. I don't think Brennan's got damage on his cars, or if something's not quite right, because as soon as they stop squabbling behind him, they are gaining on him really, really quickly. The gap's come down by, what, half a second already on this lap alone.
Well, I do think maybe there's that. Obviously, the draft is a big deal here at Thruxton. We see it in every single car you race, don't you? But I think McIntyre is being smart about this. He's accepting 3rd place for this 10 minutes. He's just pushing Smith down the road. It's a bit odd, really, because obviously, but Brennan, he's the one who's having to punch the hole in the air, isn't he? And these cars aren't particularly aerodynamic, as Callum Newsham pulls off after a huge hit somewhere, but that car is damaged.
Yeah, they were pretty much 3 abreast going into the chicane. I saw in the background, and that's Dave Newsham losing out as well.
Oh!
That was Brad Smith running into the back of him, I think, as Newsham was slow. And I think maybe as he jumped on the brakes to avoid hitting him, he lost control. I don't think there's any damage on that car, but it certainly damaged his chances of a good result in this race. The silver lining to that, of course, being that he could end up with a good grid position for race number 2. Top 3 back together again. We're only just into the second half of the race, and Jordan Brennan is starting to struggle here. He defends massively going out towards Church Corner, and Jack Smith looks to the outside. McIntyre again is behind them both. We've been here before. Into Church they go. There's a bit of a stack up of Smith, tries to avoid leaving the door open, and now that slipstream starts to build. They close all the time. To the outside goes Smith. Where does McIntyre go? He goes with Smith. He's going to push him up the hill as he tries to move into 2nd place. He can't do that, but Smith does take the lead. Outbrakes himself a bit, but he'll be able to block the line through the middle of the chicane, and Jack Smith goes back to the front.
Yeah, you said we've been here before. Last time Callum Newsham took advantage of everything, but going through the first corner, it's Smith on the inside, and yet again Brennan throwing the pace around the outside. He did it at Church. He's done it through the left-hand, the first corner as well. As they go through the left, it's going to be Brennan on the outside. Who's the last of the late breakers? It's logically going to be Smith going through the complex in 1st place, but how they come out of it is anyone's guess at this rate. McIntyre again semi-happy in 3rd place as they squabble just ahead of him, but he's dropped back just a touch. So I think maybe McIntyre, there was a mistake there. Maybe he was overcompensating, maybe over-braking, as he thought maybe there was going to be a crash. But here comes Jordan Brennan yet again. Smith getting it a little bit loose.
This is fantastic racing. Remember that Brennan leads the championship by 4 points over McIntyre. Smith is 6 points off the top, so he at the moment is the one that could gain the most out of this as far as the championship standings are concerned. That's why he's fighting so hard for these positions. Looked like McIntyre was getting a run on Brennan as we cut back to Brad Smith, who is defending, no he's not, he's trying to take 10th place away from Mick Sutton, but these are 2 drivers in separate classes. Change for 2nd, McIntyre up the inside of Brennan. I'm convinced that Brennan's car is not working right, even when you take the slipstream into account. He is woefully slow.
Oh!
McIntyre, he hit the barrier out of the chicane. A huge spin for the man 2nd in the championship, and he plummets down the order. What on earth happened there?
I've absolutely no idea. That, to be honest there, Andy, we're going to have to try and get some feedback from the people of VRRC, who will be obviously taking into account everything. They have more cameras and more replays than we do, but Smith is still leading from Brennan, and McIntyre with a huge incident. You mentioned Brennan's car not working. I can tell you McIntyre's won't be working that brilliantly either. He seems to be still going, but that car must be slightly damaged the way it acted out of the final chicane.
Yeah, we believe he hit one of the sponsors' signs, which are a little more solid in the sim than they are in real world. It's like hitting a concrete block, and that is what not only spun him around, but almost flipped him over. Right, this battle's getting tastier and tastier by the lap, isn't it? That's Brad Smith. Oh dearie me, it's all gone wrong. Off goes Mick Sutton into the field. I was going to say the barriers. He actually missed the end of the barrier. You can just see him sitting stage right. He is so far away from the road that I doubt he'll be able to find his way back on. Oh, he's found the black stuff now. He's aiming towards it, gets back on the road. How did that all work out? Carroll got 9th, Smith got 10th, and Kenny Press moves up into 11th place. We lost Eric Bolton and Carl Felvers, by the way, to the pit lane. They're out of the race after, I believe, separate incidents at the chicane. Callum Newsham also out of the race, and Dave Newsham 1 lap down, as here goes the fight for 7th place. Eric Axelson moving ahead of Dave Buki.
Yeah, Mick Sutton's back in the pits, and to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if he's halfway down the M4. He crashed that hard with that one there, but there we go. He's unfortunately DNFing, which is obviously not nice to see. That will really throw sort of a spanner in the works for the championship as well. Looking forward, well, not looking forward to seeing how that changes things, but obviously it will be interesting, put it that way. Eric Axelson, I mentioned before how he was struggling outside the top 10, and yes, there's been a lot of crashes, there's been a lot of DNFs, and he's taken advantage of a fair few of them. But the fact he's up to 7th, realistically 5th in class, is still a pretty decent recovery drive from him. Maybe he just didn't get to practice as much as he wanted. Thruxton, there is a knack to it. It's all about commitment. We've said it time and time again. But realistically, it's all about practice around here. Maybe Eric just didn't have the practice, and he's finally getting it together.
I want to draw your attention for a second to the silver class battle, because Joel Lask at the moment is on course to recreate that 3rd place that he scored at Brands Hatch a week ago. However, Paul Zanatachi is catching him. Zanatachi's got more of a slipstream from Lask than Lask has from the cars ahead. You can see there about half a tenth or so quicker for Zanatachi that time than the class leader, but the gap is under 0.8 of a second, whilst Lask is about 1.3 behind Jordan Brennan. Jack Smith, by the way, has checked out at the head of the field now. He ain't going to be caught. These two, though, being caught by Rich Hayden. We haven't really seen a lot of Rich at the pointy end of the field. I hope he doesn't mind me pointing that out, but he's a bit of a trouble magnet so far this season as Rich Hayden. He hasn't had the good fortune that he would have liked, but he's into the top 5 now. Remember, he is a gold-graded driver as well, so right now, Jack, he would be on the class podium. Yeah,
all we've seen of him really is as that's Brad Smith going very slow and very wide. I'm not sure what's wrong with him then. Maybe there is a coming together with Andy Carroll and he's slowed down to let back through. Maybe, yeah, it must have been. But yeah, as you mentioned, Rich Hayden before, the only thing we've seen of him really, especially tonight, is the fact that he span on the qualifying lap when we jumped on board with him. So he'll be pleased to see himself getting a little bit of airtime at the sharper end of the field, like you mentioned. Still behind 2 silver drivers. I don't think he's going to catch Smith or Brennan. Oh, actually, I don't know. Brennan, as I said, not that quick, is he?
No, Brennan must have a problem of some sort. I would say ordinarily this is tyre wear maybe, but it was within about a third of the way into the race, wasn't it? Suddenly that car just didn't seem as quick as it had been before, so I don't know if he's had a knock with maybe one of those tyre walls or maybe something like a sponsor's board that's just maybe hurting that car, but he's 3.5 seconds behind Jack Smith all of a sudden, so not entirely sure what's going on. There is Brennan heading out of the complex. Hard to tell sometimes, isn't it, Jack, whether there is any damage, but we're riding on board with him now. Does all look well to you?
Oh, I mean, his steering is straight, and that's all we can really tell, isn't it? Us commentators even, we can't hear the engine, so we don't know whether there's whether he's down or whether he's not hitting the limiter and everything like that. We're not entirely sure, but realistically, if you want to just look at his lap times, that's the real telltale sign of whether he's damaged or not. He's about half a second down, 0.6 down on Jack Smith on that previous lap, and all due respect to Joel Lask, he's equaling Jordan Brennan's time, and anybody just needs to look at qualifying to say that that shouldn't be happening if Brennan had a healthy car. So these guys are starting to pack back in. With 2.5 minutes to go, I genuinely do think we're going to have a battle for either 4th place or maybe even the top 2, maybe even to get into 2nd.
Well, Jack McIntyre is going to be taking no prisoners here, is he? Because he's back on the tail of this group. Remember, you only score points within your class. So for McIntyre, this first overtake against Rich Hayden is possibly the most important one, because that is for 3rd in the class. That is for extra championship points, and he's much neater and tidier through the complex. Looks like McIntyre's car, if it is damaged, it's not badly damaged after his skirmish at the chicane a few laps ago. With 2 minutes to go, though, he could still gain some more places. Look at the power of that slipstream as they head towards Noble. He doesn't want to make the move here, really. Instead, sets himself up for the move into Goodwood Corner. Can't get to the inside, so takes the wide line ahead. Look, Zanatachi on the tail of Joel Lask for the class lead in silver as well. So it's a job to know where to look here. If Lask starts defending from Zanatachi, Jack, that's really going to allow Hayden and McIntyre to close in as well.
Yeah, and I think Brennan would enjoy the fact that these two are starting to get a little bit closer to each other, as we mentioned before. Brennan has now checked out at the tune of 1.2 seconds, so second place probably isn't going to be under threat as Lask looks wide. Doesn't make the apex either. Again, it's a blind braking zone. Zanatachi's nailed that third sector. There's a little bit of speed that he could have carried out of the chicane, but he wanted to make sure he was lining up at the right place as they go into T1.
no.
Rich Hayden is no longer with us. Rich Hayden is in the tyre wall. Joel Lask up into natural third position. Zanatachi not quite making it stick, but McIntyre has gotten past. I have no idea how. We don't want to make any speculation, Andy, but Rich and Jack were quite close to each other, and Rich is no longer here. Pure speculation, though.
Yeah, I'm such a shame for Rich Hayden. He's destined not to get a good result this season, isn't he? That was by far the best we've seen out of him so far. And he's now in the pit lane. Now remember, if he's not classified as a finisher in this race, then he's not eligible for the reversed grid. So we'll have to wait and see. It could be Dave Newsham that ends up on the pole for race 2. We'll see whether or not he gets back out there or whether he's classified in the final results, because we are about to start what will be the final lap of a sensational 7th round of the championship here at Thruxton. Jack Smith's going to win it by over 5 seconds, it would seem. Jordan Brennan's second place looks a bit more certain now, but behind him, it's anybody's guess. Joel Lask in third, leads the silver category, but the purple car, Paul Zanatachi, right behind him, is looking to try and take that class win away. And for Zanatachi, Jack, this is important because, of course, Andy Carroll, the silver class championship leader, having had that incident with Brad Smith down at the complex, is only 4th in class. So if Zanatachi can win, that would move him well into the lead of the championship.
Yeah, obviously we don't want to speculate too much on championship before the race is completely done, do we? Because McIntyre is right behind Zanatachi, and although they won't want to fall over each other, there's every possibility. But yes, it's absolutely very important, and Carroll will be sort of feeling the effects of this. He's done brilliantly over the course of this season, Carroll, but you have to admit, although Carroll's had 3 race wins, Zanatachi's only had 2, Zanatachi has had the better average, hasn't he? Hence why he's sort of so close in the championship. And after this race in particular, he's been Mr. Consistent, always in the top 2 or 3. Fantastic to see him driving so well here, and again, mixing it with the golds.
Yes, he is. Up through Church Corner then. Doesn't look like Zanatachi has much left for Joel Lask. Instead, he's going to have to turn to defence. If I were McIntyre, though, I wouldn't bother overtaking these two. It wouldn't get me any extra championship points, and the only thing it does is guarantee that I'll start further back for the second race. I think McIntyre might well be thinking about that as well. For Jack Smith, though, he's thinking about another race victory and a nice, juicy haul of championship points as well. Oh, Jordan Brennan, tactical all-one, slows down to allow the silver-graded drivers through, but still holds on to second in class. That was all about the grid position for the second race, and you see, sometimes I do make some sense, because I think both he and McIntyre were thinking about race 2 more than their finishing position in race 1. So Joel Lask and Paul Zanatachi both on the podium, and that's Brad Smith tangling with a Newsham. That's Dave Newsham, who is at least 1 lap behind him. That will not go down well.
No, it won't particularly. We've seen lots of drama at that final chicane, as well as that was an interesting one. One of the bits of drama that we did see, we've actually got clarification on. It was Rich Hayden ended up in the wall in that penultimate lap, or even the last lap actually. And there was a slight speculation from myself, granted, that maybe Jack McIntyre was involved in that somehow. Rich has come on the Discord and informed us that it absolutely wasn't. It was his fault. He got crossed up in the last chicane. So Jack McIntyre, as clean as we've ever seen him, put it that way. So, yeah, like usual, he hasn't done anything wrong. But he does take 5th position. Like you mentioned, though, you do make a bit of sense, Andy. They're both going for those reverse grid starting positions. They'll now have at least 1 or 2 rows ahead of Jack Smith, which could be crucial in getting to the front first.
Well, even a broken clock's right twice a day, I suppose. Right, we'll unpack all of that action, and plenty of it there was, in just a few minutes. Race 2 on the way. Don't go anywhere. Well, arguably the race of the season has just concluded here at Thruxton in the Maximum Networks Touring Car Trophy, powered by VRRC. The second half of the season starting with a bang, that is for sure. It's Jack Smith that takes the race victory after 16 laps of racing, and he joins us now in the commentary box. Well, Jack, that was pretty exciting.
Just a bit, yeah. Honestly, did not expect to be coming away with the win there. That was such a hairy race. I'm really surprised we didn't make contact in places. So, yeah, really props to the guys I was racing against there, because that was some proper clean racing, and I'm sure it looked fantastic on stream as well. So, but yeah, well happy with that. I only had a few hours to get used to this new sim I've got, so it was a bit hairy getting ready for it, but yeah, it's all paid off. So, yeah, well happy.
Yeah, I mean, that was a heck of a race. It looked, though, like Jordan Brennan was potentially going to have the pace to just pull away from you. You and Jack McIntyre were fighting for second place in the early going. He was pulling clear. And then, I don't know, something seemed to happen about a third of the way through the race, and suddenly you three were back together again.
I think Jordan may have touched the wall at the last chicane or something. It looked like he had damage because he was way off his normal pace. So, but yeah, I mean, this track, as soon as you go off or make a slight mistake, it kills you. So, yeah, anything like that, it's brutal for this track.
We saw there Jack McIntyre quite happy to hold station in 5th on the last lap, and Jordan even dropping 2 positions there to start a bit higher up for race 2. Your thoughts on that?
Interesting, yeah. I'm sure it's going to be, it's going to be a key part of this race. So, yeah, we'll just have to try our best and see what we can do.
Good stuff. Well, congratulations on another win, Jack. That will put you certainly a little bit closer to the top of the championship. Best of luck for race 2.
Cheers, guys.
Jack Smith then gets another race victory, but Jack Oliphant, silver drivers outnumbering golds on the podium. You've got our second place finisher and silver class winner.
Yeah, Joel, congratulations on the silver victory, but in terms of overall podiums, you got a third, you got a second, there's only one more to finish the book, isn't there?
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? No, that was a tough race, to be fair. Just trying to hold on to the tyres towards the end was really, really difficult. I didn't want to get too involved with the guys up at the front. I could see they were battling away and they were starting to pick each other off, so I thought I'd hold steady, just see what I could do, and yeah, just finish where I could.
How was the pressure from behind, though? Because obviously Paul was chasing throughout the entire race. He didn't have loads of time on you, but right at the end there may be a little bit of a problem for you, but you managed to hold on.
Yeah, it was just coming into that last corner that I just managed to get away, but the exits that he was getting was just phenomenal. There was no way I was going to be able to keep up with that, so I just had to defend every corner, every lap, just to keep him out at bay until his tyres started to die off a little bit, and then I could sort of keep an equal gap between them. But yeah, it was a really good race.
Well, fantastic. Congratulations on the silver victory and obviously the overall second. Good luck for race number 2.
Appreciate it.
So, Joel Last then, second place for him, as we said, the silver class victory. Paul Zanatachi, though, with second place, we think has moved back into the lead of the silver class championship. Paul, it's not a race win, but valuable points in the bag there.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleased with that. Went really well. A few little incidents I kind of had to avoid, and it kind of dropped me back a little bit off Joel, but otherwise, yeah, really happy with how that went.
It was a great battle between you two, and of course, because the overall leaders were squabbling so much, you were at one point well in contention, maybe for a race victory, certainly for a podium, of course. It must mean a lot to get onto that overall podium, even though the silver championship is your goal. Finishing top 3 outright's got to be nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think just coming to Thruxton is kind of something's clicked, and I just seem to be quite quick here. And yeah, it's a privilege to be this close to the front of the gold guys, really. So yeah, really happy with that.
Well, we're about 30 seconds away from the second race, Paul. We'll let you go, but well done on another podium finish. Paul Zanatachi then third place in the race, second place in the silver category. And we now move on to race number 2. The reversed grid sees Dave Newsham line up on pole position. Kenny Press alongside him, Brad Smith behind. Now, he and Dave had a bit of a coming together towards the end of that previous race as Brad was lapping Dave Newsham, so that could be interesting between the two of them. Andy Carroll is 4th, ahead of Dave Buki and Eric Axelson. Jack McIntyre and Jordan Brennan there, sharing the 4th row of the grid. The lights go on, they go out. now, and for the 8th time this season, we are racing here at Thruxton side by side for second place there because Brad Smith is away quicker than Kenny Press, but it's Dave Newsham that holds the advantage into the first corner. Brad Smith up behind him. No love lost between these two after the first race, and already Smith weaves from the inside to the outside, tries to challenge for the lead into the complex. Door handle to door handle into the braking zone. They almost lean on each other, but Dave Newsham looks as though he'll hold on to the lead, Jack.
Yeah, I thought Brad Smith was going to potentially make an enemy out of Dave Newsham for a second, and Kenny Press actually, because he very much judged the spatial awareness down to a T as he moved back across the two drivers, but he's doing everything he can to try and score Nicky Taylor some vital points going into the final stage of the championship, and it looks like going through Noble that Smith may well have come up with the money as well. Brilliant move by him. Dave Newsham's going to be on the inside for Church to try and retake that lead back from him. Kenny Press again lurking in the background, hoping to take advantage potentially. Andy Carroll there as well. Obviously, as Newsham on the inside of Church manages to get the car very nicely slotted up the inside. Brad Smith has to settle for second. Going down towards the final chicane, well, you know what's coming, Andy. There's going to be a lunge from somewhere.
Yes, is it going to be for the lead or for something further back? It's for something further back because McIntyre is 3 wide on the inside for third place. That was brilliant and immediately sets off after Brad Smith and Dave Newsham ahead. So Newsham Senior leads the first lap side by side for second. McIntyre to the outside. I notice Jack Smith is still languishing down in 13th place. So if McIntyre can go and win this race, there could be some big points on their way to him. Side by side up the hill into the braking zone of the complex. Smith is late on the brakes. So is Kenny Press actually, who goes round the outside of McIntyre, tries to get third place away from him. Brilliant stuff from Kenny, who is at the moment the silver class leader. McIntyre fends him off, but that just allows the top two to pull clear.
Yeah, I think McIntyre must be driving a TARDIS or something because he's just evaporated into third place. We're not sure how he got there, but he's driving exceptionally well. I mean, we're talking about people, trying to play the system, and he started 5th last. So the fact he's up to 3rd is pretty damn impressive. Kenny Press flies off the left-hand side, and as I mentioned in qualifying, the track just keeps going away from you. You can never really get back onto it, and Kenny Press is finding that issue right now as he falls behind. There he is in the background, but there's too much going on in front of us, Andy. We have to focus on Rich Hayden, who's ahead of Carl Felvers, and no, actually we're going for a race lead move here as Brad Smith tries to fly around the outside, carry some momentum. I remember Matt Neal doing that to my brother, and it's heartbreaking when you're the driver, but not when it happens like that. Huge incident on the last corner. That's a big pile-up, and that's going to affect a lot of drivers.
Bleeding McIntyre. McIntyre was in that as well. I think he's got damage. Dave Buki definitely has. He's pointing the wrong way in the Kinetic Motorsport car, but Jack McIntyre ran into the back of the cars ahead as they were having their incident. He ran into the back of Brad Smith. He ran into the back of Dave Newsham. Newsham is off with damage, I think. Yes, there he is, taking the shortcut route through the complex and rejoining back on the track. It's not quite going to plan, is it, for Dave Newsham here today? He's had a few incidents so far this season. The steering doesn't look like it's pointing in quite the right direction, and his race is essentially done. Right, what does that mean for the race? It means that Jordan Brennan somehow leads the way again with Andy Carroll second, Paul Zanatachi third. Remember, he started right towards the back of the grid. He started alongside Joel Lask, who's still stuck down in 8th. So Zanatachi's had a brilliant drive so far, and that's his championship rival, Andy Carroll, ahead of him, with Jack McIntyre right behind. Now, if McIntyre's car isn't damaged, which it might not be too badly damaged, he might still be in this. He needs to clear these two quickly, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's as if someone's turned damage off, isn't it, on this sim? It's madness how McIntyre's car is still, well, pointing in a straight line, I suppose. But yeah, absolute madness. When you just ask, what does that mean for the race? All I could think of was God knows, because it was absolutely mayhem, wasn't it? But it looks like McIntyre has recovered really well. In fact, he's already one position up than he was last lap. He's already into second place. And Jordan Brennan is obviously the car that he's going to be trying to chase down. Brennan in the lead by 1.4 seconds as we see Zanatachi getting attacked by Rich Hayden. This is pretty much similar to the positions they found themselves in race number 1 as well. Rich Hayden trying to crack into the silver sort of battle that's happening ahead of him. The only difference really is that it's Andy Carroll who is leading the silvers and not Joel Lask.
Yes, and that is, of course, significant because looking at the points after that first race, Carroll is now 3 points behind Zanatachi in the championship for the championship lead and only 2 points ahead of Dave Buki. Well, Buki's obviously had his problems in this race, so now it's all about Carroll versus Zanatachi for the silver championship. In the gold championship, well, that man there, Jack Smith, I said he'd be close to the championship lead. He is just 3 points behind Jordan Brennan coming into this race. Brennan, though, leads the race at the moment, so Smith needs to get a move on. He's 6th overall overall. That is 4th in class. As up the road, Zanatachi goes for it at the inside of Andy Carroll. Couldn't quite get the move made, so the positions stay as they were with Carroll, the class leader.
Yeah, I think Smith was having a look at Rich Hayden as well, maybe trying to force him into his mistake, but Zanatachi going offline to try and attack Andy Carroll. No, going into the inside. Really strong and intentional move there by Paul Zanatachi. It's going to be on the outside as they flow through the left-hander, but as they head into the chicane in the braking zone, that's importantly Zanatachi's corner. Looks like Andy Carroll's fighting back. He's going to have the inside. There's contact, and I think, is that Andy Carroll making contact with Jack Smith? And who's that? It's Rich Hayden. You just, if he didn't have bad luck, he wouldn't have any luck at all, would he?
I don't believe that, but that is twice now in this race already that overall championship contenders have been caught up in someone else's drama, because look, Jack Smith was delayed in that and has dropped down to 9th. I don't think he took a particularly big hit at any point, but it lost him so many places because they were stacking up behind. It is now Lask who moves into 4th. Remember when I said he was 5 or 6 places behind Paul Zanatachi? Suddenly he's only about a second and a half behind him there, 4th place overall. Then it's Carl Falvers, and then it's Callum Newsham. Running wide there was Eric Axelson, so Jack Smith goes back into 8th place, but Callum Newsham on the attack for 3rd place in class and 5th place overall. He makes the move stick into the club chicane, and he'll now try and escape before Jack Smith gets back onto his tail.
Yeah, Jordan Brennan is the only driver that seems impervious to all this, isn't he, being this far ahead of everybody else. He's leading the way by the tune of 2.5 seconds, so even if he did have a little bit of damage in the first race, he's obviously got it all fixed and got a new car because he's absolutely flying in this one. Callum Newsham defending, but also drifting through the first chicane. And I was about to say holding off Carl Felvers, but he didn't hold him off for very long on our cameras, unfortunately. He goes through, and so does Jack Smith, who obviously gets a free position from that. Andy Carroll, 3rd place in class, but importantly, he's all the way down in 8th overall. The next silver driver is in 4th overall in Lask, so it's going to be a little bit tricky as Smith goes ahead of Felvers as well. So Smith is now, after everything that's happened, in the top 3 of the gold standings, which is quite incredible, I think.
Yeah, definitely, and could still go after cars ahead, really, couldn't he? Because Jack McIntyre's only about 1.7 seconds up the road from this lot. Carl Felvers with an interesting line out of Church Corner. Not quite sure why he peeled over to the right-hand side like that. It killed his momentum, though. Maybe he was allowing Callum Newsham through, although I find that sort of hard to believe. Anyway, Newsham does go through and breaks very late into the club chicane. That works on the way in, but then it slows him down on the exit, and it means that any time he gained under braking, he loses again through the middle part of the chicane. Just past 1/3 race distance then, Jordan Brennan leads by 3.1 seconds over Jack McIntyre in 2nd. He's 1.3 then ahead of Paul Zanatachi, who is 3rd and leads the silver category. Joel Lask is 2.5 seconds behind him now, 4th overall, 2nd in class, with Jack Smith down in 5th place. So, yeah, this is working well for Brennan at the moment, isn't it? As long as he doesn't hit a tyre stack again, he's looking good for another race victory.
Yeah, he won't thank you for putting the commentator's curse on him now, though, will he? There are 12 minutes left. He's probably, well, hopefully not listening, put it that way. McIntyre, really strong as well, it has to be said. I mean, Brennan and McIntyre, obviously, they finished 4th and 5th overall in the first race, probably more than anything to get that reverse grid position. It's coming on song here, isn't it, Andy? And if you look at Jack Smith, who obviously started right at the back of the field, 5 positions behind Brennan, well, roughly. He's obviously 5 positions behind him now as well. So, you know, you can say there's been a lot of drama and a lot of things have happened in between. But when you look at the timing sheet, you can sort of see what I mean. There's that definite gap that Brennan was able to get through quickest and therefore survive.
Yeah, and it's, whoops, mix up there with a bit of a moment at the chicane. It's hard to say for sure whether that slightly better grid position is what saved Brennan, but certainly you look at the races that both McIntyre and Smith have had here, and the incidents that they've been involved in, perhaps Brennan would also have been a part of that had he started that couple of places further back. I mean, he's only 3.8 seconds ahead of McIntyre, actually, which, given the fact McIntyre himself has been involved in a fairly major shunt at the chicane earlier on, it kind of goes to show that Brennan needed that advantage of extra track position to be able to make this one stick. But we are only just coming towards half race distance. Tyre wear can sometimes be an issue here at Thruxton. A 20-minute race is a decent length of time for that left front tyre to be punished for around here, so we'll wait and see whether or not McIntyre can do anything with him over the second half of the race. Eric Axelson here, 8th position for him, and that is 6th place within the gold class. He's got Kyle right ahead of him though, and he's going to get a nice slipstream here up towards the chicane.
Yeah, we have two DNFs so far as well. Rich Hayden and Brad Smith is worth keeping you up to date with. Unfortunately, they're in the pit lane, so they won't be scoring any points this afternoon. Eric Axelson trying to chase down Carl Felvers, like you mentioned just before. There's also been a change for fourth. Jack Smith has gotten past Joel Lask as well. So although that's not really anything to do with the points, it is track position. Mick Sutton off the road. I'm not entirely sure how he would have managed that, pointing in the right direction at that particular part of the circuit, but he's blocking the ambulances, so it's good that he got out of the way.
Yes, definitely. He made a mistake there a lap ago, didn't he? And possibly made an even bigger one this time around. Rich Hayden, by the way, reporting back to us saying that Andy Carroll had a spin and hit him, which put him into the barrier. So we sort of saw that, and unfortunately, Rich Hayden was right in the middle of it. Right, here is Callum Newsham. Wherever there is a battle, there is almost always a Newsham, and here it is Callum getting stuck in, fighting for 5th place. Notice Jack Smith has got himself ahead of Joel Lask, that's 4th overall, but doesn't actually change either of their class positions. Up towards Church Corner, though, goes Callum, looking to the inside of Joel Lask. He goes in on a tight line and still comes off the corner, slightly quicker than the car ahead. That shows just how well Newsham's got that car working through Church, but Lask, in fairness to him, is not rolling over and letting him go here. He's perfectly entitled to fight for this place, and fight for it he is.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually quite hard to keep up with them when they're actually flying straight at you, because they're basically their liveries are the reverse of each other, aren't they? It's a little bit confusing, to be honest. But you're absolutely right. Lask is absolutely no reason to try and just let Callum Newsham go, because Lask needs to try and put as much pace in the track as possible to try and catch up to Zanatachi, which Jack Smith hasn't managed to do just yet either. Zanatachi is really done very well here, in my opinion. He's actually right on the back of Jack McIntyre. And we look here, there's a potential that Jack McIntyre has a little bit of damage, but his lap times would suggest that it's not that bad. But Zanatachi is right there, and we could be seeing another silver podium, but overall podium, realistically. Zanatachi, yet again, with that 3rd place overall podium in race 1, could be on for a 2nd place overall penalty, and that would equal Joel Lask for the last week and this week.
Yes, and I think another award that went to Joel Lask a week ago might well be finding its way to Paul Zanatachi if he pulls this off, because
yes,
he is indeed challenging for 2nd place overall here. I do suspect that McIntyre is carrying damage. It was a fair whack that he gave to the 2 cars ahead of him when they had their own accident at that corner they just came out of, the final part of the club chicane. His lap times are about 3/4 of a second or so slower than Jordan Brennan. They have been for the last couple of laps at least, and his top speed is about 1.5 mile an hour slower. Now, 1.5 mile an hour does not sound like much, but given the fact these cars are all running on a fixed setup, i.e. they're pretty much identically set up, it's only things like tyre pressures and brake bias that you can tweak, that probably, that should mean, in theory, that they'll all be capable of going the same speed. So to have 1.5 miles an hour difference does sort of tell you there might be damage on McIntyre's car, as Axelson still hasn't broken through the defences of Carl Felver, so they might be able to do that on the inside at Noble.
Yeah, it's nice to see that they're having this battle between the 2 gold drivers, and they're keeping at it, aren't they? And to be fair, a lot of racing respect between Axelson and Felvers. We've seen both of these drivers not necessarily together producing this sort of racing, but with other drivers in VRRC, and they're absolutely fantastic to watch. Really respectful. There's a little bit of leaning, but that's all it ever gets to. They keep their calm heads, really race, especially for Carl Felvers, racing beyond his years, but really sort of like just smart in how they go about their business, both of these drivers. And we're looking forward to seeing how they get on with this one as well, because Felvers braking a little late there might give Axelson the opportunity, but the line is so narrow through that final chicane, it means Axelson actually had to slow up himself. And if you look in the rear view mirrors, Andy Carroll's come to play.
Yeah, Andy Carroll recovering from that moment that he had early on in the race at the complex. You could see there from riding on board with Axelson through the chicane how much those rumble strips at the club chicane really disrupt the car. The steering wheel rattling around, our camera rattling around, and the car sliding its way through the chicane. That's the quickest way through there, but it doesn't look particularly safe to be using all of that curb. Axelson then still stuck behind Felvers, keeps on closing in at this part of the circuit as he throw one up the inside at Goodwood. No, chooses to take the wider line. They almost run into each other. And it goes to show, doesn't it here, Jack, just how difficult it is to run this close at these speeds. He's got the overlap, though, on the inside line towards Church Corner. That's a really dangerous place to try and make a move. They run wheel to wheel through the corner. Surely not. Oh, they almost lean on each other. Brilliant racing, and Andy Carroll inserts himself right into the middle of it.
Yeah, I love a bit of lean and bop across the church, don't you? And I think Andy Carroll is right in prime position. He's just waiting for something to explode here, something to go bang, and for himself to take advantage. Of course, Carroll, being a silver driver, doesn't need to get involved with this, but the more that these two hold each other up, that'll hold Andy up, and then Eric Bolton comes out of nowhere and potentially takes that silver podium away from him. So he really needs to sort of try and, he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't, in terms of trying to attack these guys in front. Really nice to needs to try and play this cool. If there's an opportunity presents itself, it needs to be 100% for him to commit, because the last thing he needs is to get forced out wide onto the grass or even held up in any minor way, because Eric Bolton will bang be right there.
Yes, he absolutely will. Out through the complex we go again, on board this time with Carroll. And what he's hoping is that the two cars ahead of him start to do exactly what they did a lap ago. Go side by side out the back part of the circuit. Nice wide line there from Axelson. It looks like it loses him time on the way in, but then look at the speed that he builds out of Goodwood up towards Church Corner. Driving on the grass is not advisable at these sort of speeds. Into the right-hander. Now, who's set themselves up best for the run up Woodham Hill? Carroll are on board with. Interestingly, not sitting in the slipstream. That's a surprise, really. You'd have thought he'd be tucked right up in the wheel tracks of the cars ahead, but instead ducks to the right-hand side, possibly so that he's not unsighted for the braking zone into the club chicane. They rattle over those curbs again. 3.5 minutes left to go, and they're definitely being caught here. Oh, no, they're not. Never mind. They were being caught by Eric Bolton, and then he did a McIntyre. He clipped that very same sponsorship board, and he's in the barriers as Dave Newsham is also pointing the wrong way. It's all going on.
Yeah, I was going to say Dave Newsham. We were talking about Bolton, then we cut to Dave Newsham, and I'm thinking, oh, we cut to the wrong person. But actually, it's because Newsham had a similar incident, unfortunately. But yeah, Eric Bolton, again, is pretty much out of the equation now. So if I was Andy Carroll, I would just chill. Let these guys do what they want. Stick within maybe 3 car lengths of them, but don't get involved in anything silly, because look at this. Now, this is why Thruxton is hard. It's because of the weight transfer through Noble, and Felvers with those dirty tyres now may have a bit of problem doing it. He hits the brakes quite often through there. That's how he tries to drive the circuit. Andy Carroll gets all loose in the rear end, and he goes towards the quick fit advertising board. And Andy, that's exactly what I was saying. Stay about 5 car lengths back. And to be fair, I think he was. But the problem was Felvers came back on the circuit. Andy was damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. You can't just come off the throttle and avoid him. He tried his best. He didn't succeed. Somehow Felvers has got past Axelson and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And of course, we sound like we're being boring by telling him that he shouldn't be getting stuck in. But that's lost him, not 1, 2 places within class, and that is a lot of championship points to be giving away, especially given that the man that just overtook him for the championship lead, Paul Zanatachi, looks good for another class victory here and maximum points. So you've got to think sometimes, you've got to think championship. It's so tempting to get stuck in, and you know, you've paid your money and you're taking the time out of your week to come and race and you want to have some fun, but you'll have more fun winning the championship than you will finishing 6th in a race at Thruxton, I can guarantee you, and I think he may well be regretting that, getting too stuck into that battle as we speak. Right, side by side between Felvers and Axelson. We've said this a few times now. Axelson, having gone through, is now having to defend from Felvers, who's got the inside line through Goodwood. Oh, the car on the outside needs to not squeeze too much, and indeed they just leave each other enough room. Axelson then retains 6th for the time being as we head towards the end of the race. 2 more laps to go, I reckon, because Jordan Brennan, the race leader, has just crossed the line, which means that these two have just over 2 laps left to settle this race-long battle.
Yeah, exactly. And now we've sort of been having a little bit of slight debate in the Discord as well about driver of the day, haven't we, Andy? About whether it's between 2 drivers, basically. We're talking Paul Zanatachi or Jordan Brennan. Now, I think what we could do is potentially bring in the YouTube chat. They've got a minute to get their votes in. Who do they want to see with driver of the day between those 2 drivers, to be honest? Because Paul Zanatachi, a silver driver that just keeps putting in performances right at the sharp end. But Jordan Brennan qualified on pole. He's going to take a race victory here. He should have got a 2nd in race number 1, but only gave it up for that strategic positioning that has seen him take the lead in this race as well. So very smart driving by himself. And he was also trying to draft other people for championship points in qualifying as well. So a very sort of intellectual race weekend from him. But obviously Zanatachi, with the pure pace he's been showing and the racecraft he's been showing, he's got to be right up there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Zanatachi's driven well, don't get me wrong, but I really do admire, as you say, the intellect that Brennan has shown. I always admire people smarter than me, which is most people, to be honest, but Jordan Brennan has certainly demonstrated his smartness, if that's a word. Kind of proving my point there, aren't I? Over the course of tonight's racing, because he has driven not only quickly, but he's driven sensibly as well in some pretty frenetic situations. He's on to the final lap now. He's 7 seconds up the road from Jack McIntyre in second, who still has Paul Zanatachi behind him, and that's quite handy, isn't it, Jack? Because Zanatachi, over this final lap, is going to provide maybe a bit of a buffer to Jack Smith, who has definitely been on a charge in this race. Another few laps, and he might well have been able to challenge McIntyre for second.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that's come from, to be honest. Smith's absolutely been flying. He's been putting in lap times that are a good half a second, if not a full second quicker than Jack McIntyre, who's obviously currently in second place. Now, admittedly, Jack Smith, when I'm having a look at that lap, that was the last lap. Smith would have had the draft assistance from catching up to Zanatachi, but still, massive margins that we've been seeing. So fair play to Smith. I don't think he's going to get overall third place, but he's still putting in a really strong performance. And by the looks of it, our race leader is about to finish this race.
Yes, there will be 4 more races left in the championship, and Jordan Brennan will have a decent points lead heading to the final 2 events. He takes another victory here in the second race at Thruxton. Jack McIntyre survives for second, and Paul Zanatachi in third is your silver class winner and will also extend his points lead as a result. Jack Smith comes home in fourth. A solid race there for Joel Lasky. Didn't quite have the ultimate speed. He may have had a couple of moments in that one too, because he's a long way back in the end in 5th place, but that's still second in the class. Eric Axelsen gets the better of Kyle Felvers in their private battle for 6th place. That's 4th and 5th overall in class. And Andy Carroll is off again.
Oh,
Andy Carroll has had a night to forget here at Thruxton, and that is a monster moment that he's had. It was the world's longest accident, and I don't think he ever actually hit anything.
No, which he probably got away with. He's inside the top 10, but realistically, that's all the way down in 5th position for the silver category, behind Eric Bolton, who obviously had that incident earlier on as well. So, not ideal for him. Yeah, the last 3 laps for Andy Carroll have been something to forget, I'm sure. He's had a really good championship up until that point, but unfortunately, it hasn't carried over.
Yes, well, another dramatic race. We seem to say this after every one of the races this season, but that one really did have its moments. A brilliant race victory, though, for Jordan Brennan, and a significant one as well for the championship. Looks like our podium finishers are starting to trickle into the commentary box now, and we'll start by chatting to Jordan Brennan. Well, Jordan, we spoke to you after qualifying, and you seem to have everything under control. You were thinking tactically there as to who you were going to work with in qualifying, and then in race 1, certainly in the early part of it, tactics seemed to go out the window, didn't they?
Yeah, I got a decent start, but then I clipped the barrier in the chicane through on lap 3, and I just lost all straight line speed and front end. So it was like, that's race pretty much over. Jack got past, and then Jack McIntyre, I let him by into the final chicane, and then he went wide and hit the quick fit board, and I thought, oh dear, I'm gonna hit him here. But yeah, just managed to avoid him in that one, so it wasn't the best race 1. But yeah, race 2 was good. It was quite difficult, to be fair, to get through the pack, but yeah, when we got there, it just sort of opened up for us. There was a shunt in the chicane, and we got through it.
You couldn't believe your eyes when that all kicked off ahead of you at the chicane, because it looked like, in particular, Jack McIntyre, his luck might have been in there, and suddenly it was your lucky day. You need a bit of luck, though, sometimes in this game, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I came into that final chicane a bit sideways, so I was like, I could see it going on out the window, out the side window. So it was a bit one of those. I thought I was going to shunt, and then they shunted, and I got through. So it worked out well.
Championship-wise, it's worked out well too. You went into that race 3 points ahead of Jack Smith. Obviously, you've extended that now. 4 races to go, though. Is it too soon to start calling you the championship favourite?
It's definitely too soon. I think it could just change in a race, as you can see around here. It can change in a race. Like again, I could have hit a barrier then, and that would have been race over, loss of 15 points. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens.
Well, Jordan, that's probably the right answer, I have to say. We wish you the best of luck over the final 4 races. Congratulations, though, on a brilliant tactical drive over the course of not only the 2 races, but the whole of the night. Well done.
Cheers, thank you.
So that was our race winner, and Jack Oliphant, I believe, is with our runner-up.
Yeah, Jack Mack, a fantastic race result for you there, but obviously it wasn't without its pains at the beginning of the race, but you did brilliantly to come back through.
Yeah, that's a whole another evening of what could have been. I think that the start of that second race went so well. It was like a dream start. I think I nearly got from 7th or 8th up to, I was first in class, I think, and then yeah, the crash at the chicane that I was just way too close to be able to do anything with. So yeah, just one of those. It goes against you sometimes, but yeah, credit to Jordan and Jack for keeping it consistent as well. They've pulled away from me in the championship a bit, so it's going to be tough.
Well, don't get too carried away. The championship isn't that far gone, don't worry. We do have 2 rounds left, of course, after this one. Plenty of points up for grabs. In terms of that second race, then, obviously we spoke about the start. Was there any damage that came off that as well? Because, obviously, when Jordan just got ahead, maybe without the toe, it was difficult to catch him back up because he is so quick. But was there any damage that came from the incident? And was maybe that playing on your mind towards the end of the race?
I think so, yeah. I'm a few tenths slower than Jordan, but yeah, he just drove off, and then Jack was catching quite quick at the end. So yeah, the car felt all right down the straights, and it felt all right everywhere. So it was maybe just a bit of damage that kind of affected it all over, but quite equally. So it felt all right, but yeah, I was half a second a lap off where I was in race 1. So yeah, just how it goes sometimes.
Well, exactly, it's how it goes. It's motorsport, unfortunately, isn't it, sometimes? Well, congratulations on the second place. Stick around to see how the championships unfolded. We'll have a look at that straight after we've chatted to Paul. But congratulations, and we'll probably speak to you next week.
Cheers, thank you. And a quick well done to Paul as well. That's cracking for a silver driver to be... Is that 2 podiums, I think, so shout out
Yeah,
there.
you're absolutely not wrong. It's a brilliant result by him. And I believe Andy can have a chat to him now.
We can indeed, because Paul Zanatachi, as Jack McIntyre quite rightly says, is on the podium again. Paul, you're making a habit of this now.
Yeah, I think that race was just went really well. I managed to make good progress at the start of the race, and then settled in. Jack sort of came up to me quite quickly, so I didn't put too much of a fight up for him to go past, and then settled in behind him. And I think the slipstream is so powerful here that once you get into a rhythm and you get tucked in behind a fast car like Jack, makes it a lot easier to put the consistent lap times in, and then the gap behind I think just got bigger and bigger to the next silver driver. So I was as happy as I can be with that.
You touched upon this after the first race. You said that this is a circuit that you've clicked with, that you really seem to be getting on with well. What is it about this place? Because it is a circuit, isn't it, that some drivers love and some drivers, such as Jack Oliphant, really don't get on with. So what is it about this place that you like?
In terms of why I click with it, I don't really know, to be honest. It's just I enjoy driving it. It's a good track. It's really fast and flowing, and I know there's a couple of heavy braking zones, but generally it's just about picking a steady line and just trying to be consistent and not too many inputs, throttle or brake or steering. And yeah, it's a track that I feel flows really nicely, and I really enjoy driving it. I think that just shows in sort of how well I've done tonight, I guess.
We head to another fast and flowing circuit in a week's time, albeit one with a slightly different character, Donington Park, for the penultimate round. Is that a track that you like? And if so, what are your thoughts about that one? Because I reckon you're about 13 points up in the championship now, so that could be a really important couple of races for you next week.
I didn't know I was that far up on the championship, so yeah, really happy with that. In terms of Donington, I enjoy driving it, but I don't think I've maybe clicked with it quite as well as I have at Thruxton, or won't when I get to it from sort of previous experiences. It's a nice track. I do enjoy driving it. It's good for racing, but yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. And yeah, I'm trying not to think about the championship at the moment. 13 points can swing, in a single round. It's nothing really. So yeah, just keep your head down and do our best next time out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you came into this one about 3 points behind Andy Carroll, and he's had a bit of a shocker. That can so easily happen to anyone at any given moment. Well, the practice server for next week, if it's not already open, it will be very shortly, Paul, so I'll let you get off and get some practice in for Donington Park. But huge congratulations. Before you go, though, I think we have decided amongst ourselves that you will be the recipient of the AOC Driver of the Round. It's been a fantastic night of racing for you. 2 overall podiums, some really clever driving as well, the way that you've worked with a couple of the quicker gold class drivers. So congratulations, an AOC gaming keyboard is finding its way to you as we speak.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Excellent stuff. Paul Zanatachi then takes a commanding lead in the Silver Class Championship and gets himself a nice little Driver of the Round prize as well. And Jack, that just about concludes everything from here at Thruxton. Before we go, though, this is what the championship standings look like, and definitely starting to look good, isn't it, for Jordan Brennan?
Yeah, exactly. He was pretty happy about it, and so he should be. I don't think he wants to be named as the championship favourite, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So he's leading
it's
the championship.
Your fault now if it all goes wrong. You said
I'll take that on the chin. It's fine. It's all virtual. He doesn't know where I live. 9 points in the lead of Jack Smith, which I'm sure Jack is more than capable of overturning. Don't get me wrong. So is Jack McIntyre, 11 points behind in third place. He said it was another night of what could have been. Trust me, Jack Mack is going to be turning that around. That's motorsport. You have bad luck. Sometimes that turns to good luck next week. He could win both races. You never know. Dave Newsham, quite a way back, let's face it. But again, sort of best of the rest at the moment. There are prizes for the top 5, remember? So what Dave Newsham currently in 4th place, that'll be 2 tickets going his way for a TCR round, which I'm sure will be very useful because his son's going to be there, and I'm sure they only get a certain amount of tickets for hospitality, so I'm sure he'll enjoy that one. And obviously Eric Axelson getting those, at the moment, those 2 hours of simulator training, so there's plenty of prizes still left to be had. Lewis Brown, not turned up this week, unfortunately, so as I mentioned, the top 5 are pulled away just a touch. And if you look at the silver category, you mentioned it while you were in the interview with Paul there, Andy, as well. 90 points for Paul Zanatachi. That one's going to be a little bit tricky, isn't it, for anybody to try and catch up on, especially if Zanatachi consistently keeps putting in the performances that we've seen for the first 4 weeks. Andy Carroll, again, a bit of a night to forget for him in terms of his performances, well, his finishing results anyway. He's in second with 77 points. The second place spot is actually really hot up for grabs. Dave Buki, I think sort of quietly under the radar, did quite well today. Didn't really make any headlines, but equally has scored some solid points, so he's still in third. Joe Lask pulled back a lot of points tonight. Really strong performance from him. He's in 4th, as he was before, but this time, actually no, he was 5th before. This time, a lot closer to the top 3. And Martin Johnson, who I don't believe was here tonight. If he was, he didn't put in a performance that sort of pulled him many points, put it that way. He's currently still in 5th, ahead of Kenny Press, but he's a lot closer to Press than he is to Lask. So, bit of a catching up job for him to do as well.
Yeah, Martin, I meant to mention this earlier on, and I'm glad you mentioned it there, because I forgot. Martin, we believe, has unfortunately picked up the dreaded lurgy, and he's been kind enough to share it with his wife as well, so they're both a little bit under the weather at the moment. We wish them the best and hope they make a rapid recovery, not just so that he can be back here racing with us next week, but it certainly would be good to get him on the grid. A quick point on those Silver Championship points. I understand what you're saying, that Carroll is a long way back, 13 points now behind Zanatachi, but that was a 16-point swing tonight. Zanatachi outscored Andy Carroll by 16 points. However, at Silverstone, the second week of racing, Carroll outscored Zanatachi by 12. So if he could do that again at Donington Park, I know that's easier said than done, but if he could do that again at Donington, they're back together again going into the finale. So I'm not giving that one to Zanatachi just yet, although certainly he is in a strong championship position. Great racing then here tonight at Thruxton, and great racing, Jack, is exactly what the VRRC does best, and there's plenty more of that on the way over the coming days.
Yeah, so here we go. If you look to Tuesday night, then you can find that the MX5 Championship, there we go, the Aegon by AOC MX5 Championship is obviously powered by VRRC, heading to the Red Bull Ring National. It was absolutely brilliant at Vallelunga on Tuesday. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how they crack on with the Red Bull Ring. That's, of course, at 7:30 on Tuesday. Runs basically in exactly the same format that you've watched tonight, but obviously in MX5. Then, if you look forward to next week for more Maximum Network Touring Car Trophy action, then, of course, we mentioned it a couple of times, we're going to be heading to the fantastic Donington Park, my personal favourite track of all, and it's going to be providing some brilliant racing. A lot of these drivers know exactly what this track's about. Pretty much everybody in sim racing does, really, to be honest. That is next Thursday at 7:30 as well. Again, running in exactly the same format. And not only do we have those 2 events, we have everything else that's happening at VRRC. If you are a casual gamer, maybe you just have the Xbox, or maybe you have the Xbox Games Pass and you play on PC, whatnot, you just want to chat and have some sort of social interaction with people that play Forza, then fair play. The Discord has that for us as well in VRRC. If you want to get involved in any of the championships that you see, that is the MX-5s or the TCT or any of the others that we put forward in the future, you can get involved in that as well. We do a set course, obviously, time attacks, and then we do some fun races as well. And I believe this Sunday it's in the Porsche GT4 Cayman, which is a bit of a tricky car, but very fun. Some set of course competizione pops up every so often for VRRC, so you can get involved in any of that if you're a driver in that game as well. And lastly, but not least, the Dirt Rally 2.0 weekly stages of rallycross that are Monday to Sunday. And the best thing about that is you don't have to turn up at a specific time on a certain night. You can just, whenever you get a time, whenever you get an hour basically to put into the game, you can log on to the server, put in your time on the weekly stages, and then whoever wins, whoever has the fastest at the end of the week wins, basically. It's a brilliant way of having the competition, which is a bit more casual. So if you're interested in any of that, the Discord is down below in the description. Just click the link, you'll be taken to Discord, and you can just sign up. Fantastic to have you along for the ride. And Andy, that's pretty much it from me.
Yes, you've almost got that memorised now, I think.
I know.
By the end of the season, you'll have that word for word. So much good racing coming up, as always, on the VRRC. VRRC, there we go. And we hope to see you all along to join in the fun. Right, I think I need to lie down after the 2 races tonight. I think that's what it is. And so that's exactly what I'm going to do. My huge thanks to Jack Oliphant, as always, and everyone else who has helped to put this wonderful series together. It's drawing towards its conclusion. Just 2 more weeks of racing, 4 more races, 2 at Donington and 2 at Snetterton to decide our champions. I'm sure that you won't want to miss it. So join us again, same time, same place next week for the penultimate chapter of this wonderful championship. From Thruxton, though, that is us done for the day. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you again next time.
Woo!